Hey everyone, welcome to my channel and I hope you're all well. This is my first video on this channel and viewer discretion is advised towards the end as Lynsey's story is quite graphic. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. In late 1995 in Southport in Merseyside, Lynsey Wilson discovered she was pregnant at just 17 years old. At the time, she was in a relationship that wasn't going very well and she was facing the prospect of motherhood on her own. Lynsey's family supported in any way they could and described Lynsey as a friendly, outgoing girl, a little bit shy but mature for her age. She was just like any teenage girl, super into makeup and music and being with friends. But around 5 months into her pregnancy and after the last relationship ended, she met 20-year-old Mitchell Quy. He was a confident and outgoing man that latched onto Lynsey almost immediately, and Lynsey was so happy. She thought she'd found an amazing partner who loved her and was willing to bring up her baby as his own. They both fell deeply in love extremely quickly. Within 5 weeks, they were engaged and married. Only his brother attended the wedding from his side. Her family were concerned, and they had a right to be. Mitchell seemed too good to be true, and everything was moving too fast. Lynsey didn't even know Mitchell, but she was so in love. And to me, that's what makes this story so sad. She was young and just wanted to be loved. Lynsey's parents just wanted her to be happy and they supported her and her relationship with Mitchell. On the night of the wedding, the problems started. They started to argue. Mitchell flew into a rage and Lynsey was devastated that he ruined what was meant to be the happiest day of their lives. Afterwards, he apologised, told her he loved her. She thought that it was a one-off incident and decided to focus on their future together. They moved in and Lynsey quickly realised that it wasn't isolated. Mitchell's violent outbursts and moods were extremely unstable. He was paranoid, controlling, and accused Lynsey of cheating on him, even though he was the one going behind her back and sleeping with other women. The relationship became so toxic. He would fly into a rage, beg her for forgiveness, and the cycle would just start again. During this time, Lynsey found herself pregnant again. Due to the instability of their relationship, Lynsey had an abortion. When he found out about this, he verbally and physically assaulted Lynsey. He never forgave her for what he later said in an interview as killing our baby. He stormed out after this incident and Lynsey was happy he was gone. Her family breathed a sigh of relief, but less than 6 months later, he were back. He ended up moving back in and the pair planned on having another baby. Lynsey fell pregnant as planned. And one day she went out to run some errands, and when she returned, the house was completely destroyed, as Mitchell flew into another rage, causing hundreds of pounds of damage. They were both evicted, and Lynsey was glad to see the back of him. Despite all this, Lynsey was able to give birth to a healthy baby boy and was able to secure a home for her and her children with the help of a local women's charity. She seemed so happy and so did the kids, but there was always that worry that Mitchell would find them and spoil her new life. Her fears came true when Mitchell made threats to kill her, when she took out an injunction to keep him away from her and keep the children safe. A few months later, contact resumed and he begged for her forgiveness and pleaded to see his son on his first birthday. Lynsey gave in and her family were annoyed at this as the kids were doing really well in their new stable life without Mitchell in it. Soon after, the cycle resumed. Lynsey started to feel like a complete prisoner. Her friends and family couldn't understand why she'd taken him back, and she started to keep a private diary in which she recorded her thoughts and incidents with Mitchell. Her family felt uncomfortable visiting her at the house, but her sister did visit, only not knowing that it was the last time she'd see Lynsey alive. Mitchell made it very clear he didn't want Lynsey's sister there. Regardless, she stayed for a chat and a drink, and when she left, Lynsey said goodbye to her at the gate and slipped a note into her hand. When she got home, she opened the note. It read, "Please help me. Get me out of here." In December of 1998, Lynsey and the kids were looking forward to Christmas, getting the house ready, and Lynsey was determined to make it a special time for her little ones despite the suffocating atmosphere in the home. On the 13th of December, Lynsey seemed to be in good spirits, but on Christmas Eve, Lynsey's family tried to contact her to arrange dropping Christmas presents off for the kids, but Mitchell turned up instead, telling her family she'd gone out with some friends. But he told Lynsey's mum he thought she was having an affair, called her a psycho. Lynsey's mum didn't think too much of this as it wasn't really out of the ordinary to be so negative towards Lynsey, so she handed over the gifts. She would have been obviously expecting a call from Lynsey during the Christmas period, but not a word was heard from her. Weeks went by and Lynsey wasn't reported missing until the 5th of February 1999, by a concerned social worker who hadn't heard from Lynsey in a long time. Mitchell seemed concerned, claiming Lynsey had walked out on him for another man. Anyone who knew Lynsey didn't believe this, though. They knew she'd never leave her kids. It was at this point that Mitchell seemed to be enjoying the attention he was getting. He appeared on This Morning, a British morning TV programme, with a smirk on his face. I've seen people call him the smiling killer, as he always had this smug look on his face, all while saying he didn't kill Lynsey, dragging her name through the mud, and claiming that he was the jilted husband who she left for another man. He had TV cameras in the house, and during an interview he said, "I know they're clutching at straws, but what do they think? That I shagged her to death?" In every interview he talked about himself, how he was the victim, and when asked if he'd killed Lynsey, he said, "I'm not going to answer that, because I don't need to. Wait and see." All the while with the same smirk on his face.
I was staggered at some of the things he said, but then to me it was gold, TV gold, because I know he was incriminating himself.
Did you kill Lynsey?
I'm not going to answer that. I'm not going to answer that question because I don't need to. One day everyone's going to find out, aren't they? I didn't do that. I haven't done anything to Lynsey. I'm not capable of doing something like that. Like I say, I'm not going to sit here and start saying yes and no to stupid things, stupid questions I've already answered 1,000 times.
And just say again, and it's not a stupid question, it's a very serious question. Did you kill Lynsey?
Wait and find out. Just wait and find out.
Astonishing. What sort of answer is that?
For 18 months, Mitchell kept up this entire facade. He claimed he saw Lynsey around Stockport in a car with another man, and kept the story she walked out on him on Christmas Day. The police were ripping the hair out. They suspected him, Lynsey's family suspected him, but there was no evidence of foul play, no evidence that he'd killed Lynsey. Not one search proved what really happened. The police eventually arrested Mitchell for fraud, as he was found to have been cashing in her benefits, and they tried to charge him for her murder, but couldn't, and the charges were dropped. He had to undertake community service at a charity shop, saying, "Me having to do this and leaving me with the kids, I wouldn't piss on her if she were on fire." The police would not drop the case. The investigation continued, and Mitchell remained so self-assured, cocky and arrogant. He continued to do interviews and continued to play the victim. It was uncovered that Lynsey had an appointment with a solicitor about divorcing Mitchell on the 15th of December, but she never turned up. She was last seen alive on the 14th of December at a local post office when she noticed a missing benefits cheque she went to cash in. The police found she contacted the authorities, and they believed an argument ensued on that night. It's unknown what actually transpired on the night of the 14th of December. The police took Mitchell in for questioning again, and he kept up the facade for 36 hours until he caved, admitting to Lynsey's murder. And this is where things are going to get graphic. Like I said, viewer discretion is advised, but you can skip to the next chapter in the video if you need to. On the 8th of June 2000, Mitchell Quy was charged with the murder of Lynsey Quy. He had admitted to strangling Lynsey, but that's not the extent of her ordeal. Mitchell and his brother Elliot dismembered Lynsey's body in a bathtub. Mitchell told the police they cut off her head, arms and legs. Elliot held the bags open while Mitchell put her body parts into them. The children were in the house. Mitchell told the police where he had dumped Lynsey's remains. Her head and hands were never found. According to the documentary I watched a few years ago on ID, he would walk the children to school with Lynsey's remains, dumping them on the way. He led the police to her torso, which he disgustingly called a carcass. He was sentenced to a minimum tariff of 17 years and his brother 7 years. His brother is now out of prison, but Mitchell is actually due for parole, but a couple of attempts at parole have been denied. Personally, I think Quy shouldn't be released, and there's a fight to keep him behind bars. With his manipulation and aggression towards Lynsey and no remorse for what he's done, there's always a chance he could do this again. Mitchell would give Lynsey gifts and dote on her, and she thought that he was the stability she needed in her life. This is called love bombing, and it's a type of manipulation to draw someone into a trap. The fact they married after 5 weeks was a clear type of abuse. He deliberately coaxed Lynsey into a life that she could have never thought of. Narcissists are confident, charming. They prey on vulnerable people. This is why it's just so sad what happened to her. I read a recent article from December in the Liverpool Echo where it states his body language was sinister. Body language specialist Cliff Lansley said, "As soon as he is asked if he'd killed Lynsey, the corner of his mouth raises slightly towards his ear. This unilateral movement is not a smile, it's a movement representing contempt, a position of moral superiority. He then fully smiles, showing the kick he's getting from his inception. It's as if he's saying, I don't need to answer that question. It's up to you to prove if I'm guilty, which is something that you can't do because I'm so much smarter than you. And this is exactly why I wanted to talk about this case. It's played on my mind for years, just how disgustingly arrogant another human being can be. He was depraved, twisted, and had no regard for human life, the life of his wife and mother of his child. He has no empathy and always has that smirk, which is why he's been called the smiling killer. I'm not a psychologist, so I can't say what his personality type is. This is just an observation of his behaviour. He taunted police during the investigation, making everyone believe that they are below him in some way. When people like Lynsey Quy come into contact with other charismatic and confident people, they put them down. This type of narcissism is not one that I've personally seen before, and I felt the need to tell people about Lynsey. Mitchell's parole is going to be once again put through to the parole board. I hope this nasty piece of work never gets to have a life outside of prison. Thank you for watching my first video. If you want to see more content like this, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and comment a lesser known crime or disturbing event. I'll try to report back my findings in a mini documentary style such as this. Again, thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.